Just to let you know, this episode deals with issues surrounding grief. Welcome to Filmability. My name is Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, a true discipline cinema, which you can find on Amazon and Kindle paperback. Welcome if this is your first time listening, and welcome back if you've listened before. Remember, you can find me wherever you get podcasts, so don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and all that good stuff. This week's film is Margarita with a Straw, a story about a woman with cerebral palsy who goes to New York for a writing course and discovers more about her sexuality. Margarita with a Straw is directed by Shonali Bose and Nilesh Maliar, and co-written by Attika Chowan. Shonali Bose went on to direct The Sky is Pink and the documentary A Fly on the Wall, which was also co-directed by Nilesh Maliar. Attika Chowan also went on to co-write the screenplay for Waiting, which also stars Kalki Koechlin. As usual, I would suggest you find Margarita with a Straw to watch before finishing the podcast, because I will be spoiling everything. You can find it on Amazon Prime to watch for free. However, in my experience, I wouldn't recommend it. When I watched it there, the sound quality was very poor, and I had to use subtitles. Luckily, you can buy it or rent it digitally everywhere else. So, without further ado, let's get on with the film. Okay, so the film opens with a woman making margarita, and she's put a straw in it. This woman's name is Shubhagini, and she's played by Ravathi. She goes out onto the road in heavy traffic in a van, carrying her family, including her daughter, who has cerebral palsy. Her daughter's name is Layla, and she's played by Kalki Koechlin. They go through traffic, and she looks out the window, and her father starts singing loudly, embarrassing her children. He leaves, and his daughter says goodbye, and he goes to work. This man's name is Baljeet, and he's played by Kuljit Singh. Shubhagini gets her daughter out of the van, and she ends up sitting by a table. She gets out a drink and sits with her friend, and they check out some of the people around the area. Her friend's name is Dhruv, and he's played by Hussein Dalal. She then goes into a room and is carried up some stairs, and they're ignoring her. They're treating her like an object, and they're talking about something else. Then she finally gets to the top. And yes, this does happen from time to time. If a disabled person needs to be aided in any particular way, like being lifted in a wheelchair up a flight of stairs, then you can feel like kind of a package being delivered rather than being a person. Personally speaking, I don't like it to be lifted up any stairs, as it feels more of a hassle to get up and down than it would be to just point out the inaccessibility. Also, I'm a big guy, and I don't want to be liable for any legal issues that may occur if anyone were to injure themselves while trying to lift me. Believe me, I've been in plenty of situations where good-intentioned people have thought that it would be possible to just have a go, and I always decline. You've never really felt fear until you're faced with a group of men looking at you up and down and thinking, yeah, I could lift that. Inside the room, there are various students playing a song on instruments, and Layla's looking through the window at the door. Inside the room, there are various students playing a song on instruments, and Layla's looking through the window in the door at them. One of the other students recognises her as she plays, and then Layla leaves. At home, Layla's scrolling through some social media and selecting pictures and cropping out her wheelchair. She gets a message asking about lyrics, and she looks at pictures of other friends and then closes it. Shubhagini comes in, and her little brother says that she was talking to her boyfriend. Shubhagini objects, though, saying that she doesn't have a boyfriend. As it gets dark, Layla has headphones on and she's listening to some orgasmic noises on the headphones, and then she moves away to goes to the window, and it seems like she may be masturbating. The next day in a shop, Layla is with her friend, and the shopkeeper is talking to her. In a bathroom, Layla is looking at herself in the mirror, and she puts on some lip gloss. And she goes out into a classroom, and Drew joins her. They seem closer, touching each other's hands, and eventually they kiss. Later on, some people are messing around with cake, rubbing it in a boy's face as Layla watches and encourages them. And the man with the cake in his face then comes up to her, and they talk and laugh for a bit, and she suggests that he come to her house to play music. He doesn't understand at first what she says, but then he realises what she said, and he likes the idea. This man's name is Nima, and he's played by Tenzing Dalla. I guess this is a thing that people with cerebral palsy must face quite often. Because cerebral palsy affects how some people speak, their speech may come out a little slurred or unclear. This means that when talking to somebody with cerebral palsy, people have to concentrate more if they're not used to talking to somebody like them. It's not necessarily the fault of the non-disabled person if they don't understand, though, but it can certainly get frustrating. I would suppose it would be like hearing an accent for the first time that you're not familiar with, and have to take a little time to understand the cadence and inflections. Although I'm sure that, like with most accents which are foreign to some people, there is an inability and willful ignorance where they choose not to understand and aren't willing to learn. Back home, Layla is with Shibagini and her female friend that she met in the music room, and they're talking, and Shibagini leaves the room and the girls continue to laugh. Later on, Layla is talking to Nima online, and he's talking about a band, and they're talking about song lyrics. It seems that Layla is the person who writes the songs. She gets a video call from him, and he calls her a rock star, saying he'll see her tomorrow. And she likes it so much that she falls out of her chair in excitement. At school, Layla goes to her class, and she sees Drew, and he's annoyed with her because he says he feels like he's being used by her. They argue, and he says that he shouldn't just think that she's normal because she's hanging around with normal people, meaning non-disabled. And although Drew is being kind of a dick about it because he feels rejected, he has a point. There is a certain amount of self-ableism that disabled people can fall prey to when being surrounded by the non-disabled. This stems from the idea that being disabled is wrong, so if a disabled person can fit in with non-disabled people, then this can make them seem like they're better than the average disabled person. Also, being at a school as I was, being the only disabled person that I knew, then rejection can feel all the more personal. Speaking for myself, I never felt like I was any different than any of my classmates, so when somebody treated me differently because of my disability, I would just assume it was because of who I was as a person. Only later would I learn that it's best to find people who accepted me for who I am, as difficult as that may seem. At home, Layla is playing chess on her computer, and she hears Shibagini singing in the other room. She goes in to watch her playing, and they end up singing together. In the next scene, Shibagini is helping Layla bathe, and Layla says that she likes a boy that also likes music like she does. Shibagini looks concerned though, but says that it's great. I think she can understand that her daughter may not be accepted as readily as she'd like to be. In school the next day, Layla sees Nima and hands him a piece of paper, but she then takes it away from him as he starts to open it. In the next scene, he's seen singing in a band. As she watches, she's taking part on the stage and using her laptop to mix the sound. Their band are then declared the winner, and the announcer singles out Layla and her lyrics and saying that they had to give it to her because she's disabled. The woman then points the microphone at Layla, asking if there's anything she'd like to say, and Layla just gives her the finger. And I mean, I don't think this would have been as blunt as it is in the film, but there are definitely points where well-meaning people have tried to include disabled people, but all disabled people really want is to be credited under their own ability, not because they're disabled and they do something that people don't expect. And as I said, I don't think that any non-disabled people will be so explicit with their highlighting of a disabled person. There is something of more recent years which has become something of a double-edged sword. Positive discrimination has become something that some employers have started to adopt. On the one hand, it helps more disabled people into the workplace and makes it the company that employs them look better. On the other hand, though, there can be accusations of token hires, where people think that they got the job purely because they're disabled. Also, a disabled person who does get a job because of positive discrimination may question whether they were fully suitable to get the job in the first place. It's all well and good to be employed by an employer who sees you for what you can do rather than what you can't, but there can be a tendency to be thought of as a mascot and paraded around like a show pony. However, I'm sure that positive discrimination in most places enables a disabled employee to prove exactly what they could do. Layla then goes off stage and Nima comes to see if she's feeling okay, and he says that the song was the best the band has ever had. She says that the other band's song could have been better, and he gives her a hug. And that's the point where Layla says that she likes him, and it gets a little bit awkward. He puts her down, and he says he has to go, and she's just left looking thoroughly rejected. In the next scene, Layla's family are at the hospital, and Shibagini is getting a blood test, and they talk about how Layla has been rejected from various universities, implying that it's because she's disabled. And yes, this is an issue that not only Layla but her family would understand, although it's more complicated than it may appear. First of all, there are laws in place in the UK, the US and India which are meant to ensure that nobody disabled is turned away from a job or any other kind of application because of their disability. However, at the time of filming Margarita with a Straw, this kind of protection wasn't available in India, having only been introduced in 2016. This is the tip of the iceberg too, because although a disabled person can apply for a job, it is still up to the employer whether they want to employ a disabled person. In our modern world, it's become unacceptable to dismiss a disabled person completely and explicitly saying so to their face. So employers have come up with ways of discriminating without even bringing up the issue. When I was first applying for jobs, I didn't really think it would be as bad as it turned out to be. Besides never actually hearing back after sending a job application, which affects non-disabled people and disabled people alike, there are things employers do to discriminate that don't directly address the issue and are hard to prove. Things such as inaccessible workplaces, applying for a job, being asked to come in for an interview, and then being told the workplace is inaccessible, and therefore you couldn't do the job in the first place even if you were qualified. Then there's the issue of declaring your disability on your CV or resume if you're American, only for that application to be discarded or overlooked, and excuses given as to why they couldn't possibly have a disabled person working there. This kind of thing deters disabled people from even trying and having to do lots of research before even considering applying for a job due to their inaccessibility. Just because the laws are in place, if an employer can come up with a convincing enough excuse, then they can get away with it. In the next scene, Layla is sitting outside with her headphones on when Shibagini comes along, and Layla says that she made a fool of herself with Nima, and that she can't go back to the college anymore. At home, Shibagini tells her to come into the room. She gives Layla a letter, and it says that she's been accepted at New York University. Baljeet doesn't like that she's going to go so far away, but Shibagini thinks that it'll be okay because she's coming with her. They talk about packing, and Layla puts her arms out to dance with her dad as the music plays, and they all start dancing, holding Layla up as they're all having a good time. The doorbell rings, and a woman comes in, and it turns out that she's Drew's mother because he comes in shortly afterwards. And then we're in New York. Layla is watching somebody playing chess, and she has to move, but the man tells her to keep quiet, saying that she can still watch. In her apartment, they're interviewing a carer, and the carer's rather blunt and says she doesn't do bottoms, and she understands about cerebral palsy, but she's a bit standoffish, and she also doesn't know how to pronounce their surname. Outside, Shibagini is giving Layla some gloves and says that she'll call the cops if she's not home by 4. Layla then gets onto a bus. At a class, the tutor is talking about an exercise where they have to write something down, and he gives them 10 minutes. He then comes to talk to Layla and asks her if she needs somebody to help with her writing. She says that she doesn't need it, but then she's introduced to a handsome young man and she happily agrees. This man's name is Jared, and he's played by William Moseley. Outside, Jared and Layla are talking, and she invites him to stay in India. She's putting the move on immediately. In a cafe, Layla is with Shibagini, and she says that she's concerned that Layla's missing her studies. But Layla says she's okay, and she knows when she needs to study. Later on, Layla is trying to find somewhere and find some protesters, which she joins. But it starts to get violent and hectic, and some people get arrested, so seeing a blind woman, she helps her out by putting her on a lap and going away as quickly as they can in Layla's wheelchair. They sit and try to compose themselves, and Layla says the police are even more dangerous there than they are at home. She asks if the woman she rescued is from India because she has brown skin, and she explains about her family, and Layla introduces herself. The blind woman's name is Kanam, and she's played by Shani Gupta. Later on, the carer's doing Layla's hair, and then Shibagini comes in and does it properly, because that's the way she likes it done. Layla then introduced Shibagini to Kanam, and Kanam then has to go off somewhere else, and her mum sees that they've been standing next to a sex shop the entire time, and she quickly moves away from it, but Layla laughs. At uni, Jared comes in and Layla says that she wants to write about her first relationship and how it felt between them. He asks her if she's had sex, and she asks if the girl that she saw kissing him was his girlfriend, and he says that she wasn't. At home, Layla calls Kanam and they go to a record shop. The shop assistant gives Layla a pad, which she can use to communicate, and Layla wants to buy it, but she's haggling because she's a student and she can't really afford it. And he says he's going to go and see if he can give Layla a discount because he likes her. At a museum, Kanam is touching a sculpture and encourages Layla to close her eyes to feel it better. Then Kanam puts her hand on Layla and moves it over her face and saying how pretty she is. And I've talked about blind people and face touching before, and I think I'll give this one a pass this time because I don't think that Kanam is properly trying to get an idea of what Layla looks like. She's just maybe putting a move on her. We will see. Outside, Layla is playing chess as Jared watches, and he says he doesn't know how to play chess. And then later on, Kanam and Layla are in the changing room, and Kanam takes off her top, and Layla can't help but stare at her body. And then Kanam helps Layla get changed. In a swimming pool, Kanam is swimming with Layla, and Layla has a flotation device around her. And at home, Layla is asleep, and she's got her head on her mother's lap as her mum talks on the phone. At a club, Layla and Kanam are talking about drinks, and Kanam asks her about dating. Layla says that nobody wants to date her, and Kanam assures her that she's very beautiful. Kanam then gets up and takes off her coat, dancing, and encourages Layla to dance with her, holding her hands. And at home, Layla says that she has a headache, and Kanam lights a candle and says that all she needs is a head massage. So Layla lies on her lap, and Kanam gives her a massage, and she goes in for a kiss. Layla sits up and holds her hand, and they kiss again, and they have sex. The next day, Shibgini calls to Layla to see if she needs to get out of the bath. Layla says that she's enjoying it, but Shibgini comes in and gets her out of the bath and dries her off, and she notices that some of Layla's jewellery is missing, and she starts to panic. She thinks that maybe it's the carer that stole it or something that happened along the way while Layla was out, but Layla says she pawned it to buy the device that would help her to communicate. They argue as it was her grandmother's chain, and Layla's mum storms out the room, leaving Layla to get dressed. Layla and Kanum are briefly talking later about Layla telling her mum about them. Then Shibgini is making up some meals, and she kisses Layla as she is prepared to go home. Layla's mum is making up some meals, and she kisses Layla on the cheek, and she's gonna go back to India. Layla is then trying to crack an egg in a pan in the next scene. She's having a little trouble, but she does eventually manage it, although she does have to clear up the mess of all the other attempts that she made. And I mean, if you're a bit wobbly, I understand that. That's fine. I mean, we could talk about my cooking disasters, but that's for another podcast. Layla's carer says that she should make sure that she always has a place to stay, because the uni won't always provide, as it seems that Layla is moving in with Kanum. Layla says Kanum can take care of her, but her carer says that lovers don't like being carers as well. At a place, Kanum is putting on makeup and Layla comes in to give her a kiss on the cheek. And the montage plays of them doing things around the city. It's sort of nice, romantic, and they're fully into this relationship. And at home, Layla is having a video call with their parents, and Shibgini asks Kanum if she wants to come into India. But Kanum says that she would, but she just hopes that she can get a visa. In the kitchen, Layla asks Kanum when she realises that she was gay, because she's perhaps starting to realise that they're going to get closer and she's going to go meet her parents and it's going to come out eventually. And they're sitting outside having a picnic, and Layla says that Kanum could be a model if she wants to. And Kanum asks Layla if she's ever heard of a blind model though. Then she starts talking about how it was when she was growing up, when she realised she was gay, and she had to hide who she was, and spent hours doing what she wanted, but also hours feeling guilty about it. She said coming out was hard, and that her mother didn't accept her, even taking her to a doctor, like being gay was an illness. Her mother then stopped talking to her, although she did say that after an argument with her father, her mother called her the week before, and she says thank goodness that she'll never have to deal with men. Layla then says that her parents would freak out if they knew about them, and she says that it's scary for her. And yes, although in the film this scene may seem a little heavy-handed, pausing the story to talk about the experiences of these two young women, disabled people are just as likely to be queer as non-disabled people. If anything, Margarita with a straw shows that not only can disabled people have the same urges and want to explore as non-disabled people do, but they can be equally inclined to love whoever they want. If you take anything away from the film, then the message should be love is love. Whether that be love between a man or a woman, two women, or even the love that we have for our families. Love comes in many forms and should be celebrated whenever it is found. Whoever you are, you should be comfortable enough to be who you always were. At the library, Layla is going through a book, and then at home, she's talking to Jared, and she admits that she only wanted him to help her because she thought he was cute. But she's with somebody now, and she asks to use the bathroom, to which Jared then suddenly realises that he's going to have to help her. In the bathroom, he helps her undress and leaves her for a bit, and she calls him back, and he comes back and helps her to get her underwear back on and lifts her up. She puts her arms around him, and they go into the bedroom, and they have sex. Later on, Kanum comes home, and Layla's waiting for her. Kanum says that she can't get a visa to come to India with her, but it turns out that she's only joking, and that they end up cuddling together. And then they're in India. They're all sitting in their van and on the way home. They're all talking and laughing, having dinner, and then at a spa, Drew has joined them, and he says that he knows about their relationship and that it will be difficult to come out. But Kadam says that Layla's mum is great and that she came out to her herself. At home, Layla and Shubgini are sitting and reading, and Layla finally tells her mother that she's bi. Shubgini starts making jokes about her father, acting as if she didn't really understand what Layla had said, and Layla says that she loves her, and her mum says that she loves her too. In the next scene, Shubgini is combing her own hair in the mirror, and she's looking sad. It seems that maybe something about what Layla said has got through to her, but she also seems sad about her own life as well. Layla and Kanum are sitting together in the next scene, and Layla is helping Shubgini wash her own hair, so it's like a sort of role reversal. The mother and the daughter have switched sides. Layla then clarifies what she said earlier about being bisexual, and she says that she loves her girlfriend. Shubgini says that they all love Kanum, and they're talking as if Kanum is just her friend, and she hasn't quite got round to it yet. Later, Layla then tells her mum that she's being hypocritical, and Shubgini says that it's just not normal the way that they are together. At dinner, it's awkward, and Layla's brother and father are talking about cricket and work and things like that. And Shubgini then leaves the table. And then outside, Kanum is playing cricket with Layla's little brother, and a man drives up, and Layla is going to the hospital next. And she wonders why Shubgini has been admitted. But Baljeet, her father, says that she has colon cancer, and she's had a relapse and is in the second stage. He says that she's a fighter though, and she will beat it. Layla then goes in to see Shubgini, and she cries as she hugs her, and Shubgini asks how Kanum is. On her way home, Layla's looking outside of the window. She's contemplating life and what's happened, and it's all getting on top of her. And at home, Layla and Kanum are talking, and Layla apologises to Kanum, and Kanum jokes, suggesting that she's not going back to New York, but Layla then tells her that she had sex with Jared, and she says that she liked it because he could see her. That night, Layla gets out of bed to console Kanum, and the next day, Kanum says that she feels like she was used. She says Layla should have told her earlier and ended it. Layla says that she didn't want to lose her, and Kanum asks if it was because of her mum, because her mum was dying. At the hospital, Layla is with Shubgini, and she tells her that her feet are cold. Layla then goes to get a nurse and get some socks for her, and she ends up just putting a blanket over her feet. And then a montage plays showing Layla and Kanum separately as they contemplate what's going to happen next with them. Layla then goes back to see Shubgini, and she's on a breathing tube. The heart monitor goes flat and their breathing stops. Layla cries as Kanum holds her, and Shubgini's funeral is then in the next scene. Her brother goes to put the CD, and it's of Layla talking about her mother, and it's followed by some singing. Layla is helped to get closer to Shubgini as she's laying out in public in the middle of the room. At home, Layla and Kanum say goodbye. Kanum asks if it was really necessary for Layla to tell her that she cheated, and they hug, and Kanum goes home. A montage plays of Layla at home, looking at pictures and sitting with her father and brother. And then Layla is sitting outside, and she goes to the hairdresser's and tells her that she wants to do something different. She gets a call, and she tells the person on the other side that she's got a date. And so she goes to a restaurant outside, and she gets her margarita with a straw, and she's smiling at somebody across the table, and it turns out she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she's smiling and sort of looking flirty at the person, but it's really just herself. And the film ends with a quote that says, The wound is the place where the light enters you, if you let it. And that's credited to Ruby. Okay, so that's the film, and up next I'm going to talk about what I think about the film in general, in a more compact kind of way, and give you an idea of what I think the non-disabled audience would think about it. Margarita with a Straw is a unique film in the way that it's not only about a disabled person who does something that the non-disabled audience may not think about, but it's also about queer disabled characters. Taking inspiration from real-life events, it fills the story with warmth, humour and tragedy that naturally blend together to tell a compelling story. Much like in Disney's Out of My Mind, Layla is shown to be a woman with cerebral palsy who has the same desires and feelings as any other human being, and that is the focus. It may not be a story that everybody gravitates towards, but those willing to try something new may learn something from the experience. The problem is, though, that although this is a story about disabled queer people, neither of the actors who portray them are disabled nor queer. Kalki Koshin's performance is reflective of a time where it was perfectly acceptable for a non-disabled person to play a disabled character. However, the story is so specific to disabled people, and queer people for that matter, that it would benefit from actors who reflect those experiences and do not just pretend to know what the experiences of the characters that they play. However, overall, Margarita with a Straw is well written and deals with the issues along the way as authentically as it can, and may offer audiences a new perspective. Okay, so up next, I usually talk about the trivia, but this time I thought I would talk about non-disabled people being in a relationship with a disabled person, because in the film it's very briefly mentioned that a lover does not want to be a carer, so I thought I'd talk about that and the legal ramifications that make it more difficult than you may think. There's a scene in the film where Layla's carer says that lovers don't like to be carers, and it got me thinking about what it's like with a non-disabled person and a disabled person in a relationship. There is little truth to what Layla's carer says, though, and I can imagine it can be sometimes difficult to keep the romance going if you have to help your partner on off the toilet or other things like that. People may assume that a non-disabled person is a carer and nothing more. That could lead to the non-disabled person being the one that people talk to more because they assume that they're in charge. Sooner or later it may feel like that the non-disabled person may be making all the decisions in the relationship, and they may resent their partner for that. On the other hand, the law put in place about non-disabled people in relationships with disabled people are complicated and may cause a divide between couples. So with that in mind, I thought I'd explore what Layla and Callum's relationship would mean if they were in either the US, India or the UK, seeing as that's where I'm from. In the US, if you legally marry, then the Social Security Administration applies a process called social deeming. This means that everything from your income, assets and belongings are considered to be owned by the disabled partner. There is a supplementary support income which can be applied for, but a married couple cannot have any more than $3,000 between them in order to qualify. Also, any savings, retirement planning, or even a modest pay rise can strip the disabled partner of their Medicaid and monthly stipend. Even if you don't get married and live together, you start a shared bank account or tell people that you're a couple, this can trigger a fraud investigation as you may be holding out on marriage. This could lead to the non-disabled partner liable for back-paying overpaid benefits. In the UK, the law immediately penalises household income upon cohabitation. If the non-disabled partner works a standard job, then their income could taper down or entirely eliminate the universal credit that the disabled person receives, leaving the disabled person entirely dependent on their partner's salary. Also, for better or worse, the Mental Capacity Act of 2005 has to determine whether a partner with an intellectual disability, brain injury, or even a neurodivergence has the cognitive capacity to consent. This has, of course, been put in place to prevent abuse towards vulnerable partners, but it's such a blanket term that anybody could be subjected to it. Finally, in the UK, if you live together for over 3 years as an unmarried couple and then break up, the disabled partner can legally sue their partner for shares of the house and ongoing financial support. In India, the law states that guardianship goes to the disabled person's parents, and that doesn't change if they choose to get married. The parents could block the non-disabled partner from making decisions on medical issues, managing finances, and even if they live together, as the guardian retains total veto power. The Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 still stands in India as well, making it perfectly acceptable for the disability to be grounds for divorce. It's classified as unsoundness of mind or physical incapacity. Also, if a non-disabled person divorces a disabled person, then the court grants the disabled person permanent alimony in order to maintain their lifestyle and views the divorce as an abandonment of a disabled citizen and a severe moral and legal failure. In the case of Lincoln and both being disabled, the law in the US says that if they are both receiving supplemental security income, then their income would be combined and reduces it to a couple's rate, therefore causing the household to lose roughly 25% of their combined income, and would make their saving for anything like medical care, house modifications, or getting an accessible vehicle illegal under penalty of losing their Medicaid. This means that many disabled couples in the US choose to live unmarried, but they are still prone to be under investigation, and if they are found to be living as a married couple, the Social Security Administration will apply the couple's rate reduction, as I mentioned earlier, and demand thousands in repayment for benefit fraud. In the UK, 2 disabled individuals must apply for a joint universal credit claim, and if either partner is able to do any permitted part-time work, the universal credit is severely reduced. If both partners require local authority funding for residential care or supported living, then the state can refuse to fund the joint home. If it's seen as more financially viable for the couple to live in separate institutional care, then the local authority can use financial restrictions to prevent the couple from living together. In India, as I said earlier, the guardianship of both people in the relationship applies. So if one of the parents on either side of the relationship objects, then the couple cannot get married. While also rare, if a disabled couple decide to live independently whilst together, the families of either person in the couple can have the police formally return them to their parental home. There is also a practice that goes widely unchecked and up to the discretion of the court that says that if a disabled couple decide to have children, then their children can be taken away from them and put into institutions or up for adoption under the pretext of best interests of the child. However, with all that in mind, in terms of the film, I don't think Layla's family would do anything like that to her, and I should stress that this doesn't happen in all cases, and that disabled couples, regardless of gender, can live happily ever after. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week I'll be talking about Radio, a 2003 biopic about a man with learning disability who becomes an assistant coach to a football team in America. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.